I want to give you the Spark Challenge. Right here, one question, 1 week, 10 minutes. For the next week, I want you to do, just for 10 minutes a day, answer one of these 3 questions that I'll give you today. I don't care if you're driving and you need to talk out loud about it to yourself, that's great. If you're a journaling person and you need to journal about it for 10 minutes, that's great too. However you do it is the right way to do it. I want to give you the first question, but first I want to give you a story. The story is about a troubled high school in the South. Now, Montlake High School was one of those schools that students were trying to do everything and anything to get out of. It was one of those schools that you hoped you did not catch a red light at. It was one of those schools that was so bad they would pay teachers to teach more at. So needless to say, Principal Watson had his work cut out for him when he arrived on the first day to Montlake High School. He stops, parks his car, takes his briefcase, turns, and as he's getting out of the car, he sees a wall covered in graffiti. He can't even read his own school's sign because it is from the top down graffiti written. And this isn't even the cool kind we have in Seattle, right? This is the bad kind. Stuff that looks like the kid's first painting. Fell off a ladder halfway through, right? That's what we're talking about. So when Montlake High School held a board meeting about what to do about the graffiti, answers started coming to Principal Watson. We should punish the kids. We should make them pay for the graffiti. Principal Watson didn't even look for the answer, how do we solve the graffiti problem? He pushed those answers aside and he said, what is the question that needs to be asked? What does this school need? Clearly something's not being met if we have a graffiti issue. So he didn't listen to any answers, he asked questions. And for the next year, he wrote letters of praise every time he caught a student doing something good. Letters would go home at 3 p.m. on the regular. Brittany is such a great student, she got all A's. Chad helped Veronica cross the street. Kelsey and Emmanuel are doing better in class. These letters started to go home day after day after day. They thought he was crazy, but after 2 months, there was no new graffiti on Montlake High School. And on the 1-year anniversary, Dr. Watson parks his car, takes his briefcase, steps out, and loud and clear he can read his own sign, Montlake High School, because there was not a stitch of graffiti on the school. See, what Principal Watson did is what so many of us forget to do. He asked question number 1, how do I focus more on the good? Now make no mistake about this, this takes work and dedication. It's not some surface level, everything's going to be pink fuzzy clouds and rainbows, right? This takes hard work and dedication. And I know you know me as the guy speaking on stage at the Spark Summit, but I am by nature a pessimist. And it's not just me. I'll get to that. I'm by nature a pessimist. If it wasn't for the books and cool summits like this, which you guys are all at right now, I'd still be walking around thinking that Y2K was the end of the world. Right? Zombie apocalypse is going to be on Seattle and they're going to rip our face off, and in 2012 the world really will implode. Okay? But it's not just me. We are all pessimists by nature. Because get this, guess how many thoughts you have a day? Is it 1,000? Is it 5,000, 10,000? No, in fact, research at Stanford shows it's 60,000 thoughts a day. That's 60,000 questions you can ask of how do I focus on the good. But I'll get to the pessimist part. What's more fascinating about the 60,000 thoughts is that they were analyzing those people in the lab, and they found that on average, 90% of those thoughts were the exact same thoughts as the day before, and the day before, and the day before. And what's even more fascinating is of those 90 repeating thoughts, 80% of them were not positive, they were negative. So you can imagine this, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, 90% of the day before, 80% are negative. And you guys thought this was the uplifting talk of the day, right? So we are all pessimists by nature. Question number 1, how do I focus more on the good? It's about adding in what's working. Okay, I used to do health consulting, and a lot of people would come to me with diets written in Coca-Cola and McDonald's cheeseburgers in the morning, right? Drive-through breakfast. And I wouldn't even touch any of that. I would say, look, obviously something's not being met. The answer is not to pull out. What's the question? The question is, how do I focus more on the good? I'd say, Jessica, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to add in half your body weight in ounces of water a day. Don't you think naturally if they're drinking more water, they're drinking less Coca-Cola? Don't you think naturally that by adding in the good, you only have so much room, you can push out the bad? Clearly, 80% of negative thoughts. How do you focus on the good? How do you add in what's working so you push out the 60,000 thoughts that aren't? Okay, and this takes work and dedication and something that's so important and ties in with question number 2. Question number 2, how do I integrate fundamentals? Fundamentals, the things you do every day on a day-to-day basis. Now, perhaps one of the best single illustrations of fundamentals comes from legendary basketball coach John Wooden. Does anyone know the story of John Wooden in this room? All right, I saw a few hands. Coach Wooden was so notorious, so great at the way he coached basketball, that his teams won 10 NCAA basketball championships, 7 back-to-back of 12 attempts. There we go. 4 of his teams won 30 wins and 0 losses. He holds the standing record for 88 consecutive wins in a series. But Coach Wooden is not remembered for his success, but he's remembered primarily for the way he coached his teams. See, for Coach Wooden, it was about the fundamentals. For Coach Wooden, what were some of his favorite sayings? You know, a winning coach like this, was it keep your eye on the prize and only losers quit? No, in fact, some of his favorite sayings were it takes 10 hands to make a basket. And the carrot is worth more than the stick. But again, Coach Wooden focused on the fundamentals. He didn't look for the answer, how do we win the game? He asked the question, what are the fundamentals? So, players would come to him and he would be so surprised when they would come to him wanting the answers to how do we win the game, that the first thing Coach Wooden did is he took players down into his locker room. He sat them just like this setting. He took a knee. He reached into his back pocket and he pulled out a sock. Because for Coach Wooden, if the players didn't know how to put on their socks, that meant they might get blisters. And if they got blisters, they might twist an ankle. And if they twisted an ankle, they might be out for the season. And if they're out for the season, they would lose the championship. Coach Wooden knew it was about the fundamentals, the day-to-day things that make you great, make you who you are, and get you on the track to success. The 60,000 thoughts of focusing on the good, the day-to-day is what we need to do. Now, I want to give you 3 questions right here. I know we're talking about 3 questions, but let me give you a sub-3. This was an exercise that really I do quite a bit and opens my eyes. I love doing the exercises. I'm sure you do as well. It was given to me by my coach, Dr. Scott. So I want you right now to think of 3 separate areas in your life. If you need to write this down, that works too. You can do it in your head, however works for you. 3 separate areas in your life. This can be family, health, relationships. Okay, it can be spirituality, finances, business. 3 separate areas in your life. Now, I want you to think of one thing you're currently not doing in each of those areas. One thing. Did you make a commitment to run every morning, New Year's, and you haven't been running? Did you make a commitment to call a friend every day and you're not calling them? Did you make a commitment to get healthy this year and maybe you haven't done so? One thing you're not doing. There's no shame in that. It's just getting honest. Now, next to that, I want you to think or write, what's your excuse? What's your excuse for not doing that thing? Is it I don't have the time? I don't have the resources? I don't have the ability? Now, ask yourself, how good is that excuse? Scale of 1 to 10. How good is that excuse? You got it? Now, this is the real kicker. How similar are those excuses? See, so much of our not doing is habit-based. We have similar patterns. We say we don't have enough time, and we forget that it's really about the fundamentals, the day-to-day things that really make us great and make our lives great. It's the putting on the socks to avoid blisters on the day-to-day things. But let me tell you, none of those 2 questions really even matter without the third one. The third one is something that's so eye-opening. At the end of the day, you got to ask, what's it all for? Question number 3. So many times working with men and coaching men, I see them row, only to find that their boat is pointed upstream. So many times we all climb, only to find, as Stephen Covey says, our ladder's on the wrong wall. How do we turn the boat around so it's downstream? How do we make sure our ladder's on the right wall? You ask question 3, what's it all for? Now to do this, I want to read you guys a story. One that when I heard really instantly opened my eyes. But while I'm doing this, I want you to be asking question number 3, what's it all for? An American businessman took a vacation to a small coastal Mexican village upon doctor's orders. Unable to sleep from an urgent phone call the first morning, he went out to the pier to clear his head. A small boat with just one fisherman had docked. The American complimented the man on the quality of his fish. "How long did it take you to catch this tuna?" the American asked. "Only a little while," the Mexican replied. "Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" said the American. "I have enough to support my family. Give a few to my friends," the Mexican said as he unloaded them into the basket. The American asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" To which the Mexican replied, "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, take a siesta with my wife Julia, and stroll into the village each evening where I sip wine and play guitar with my amigos. I have a full and busy life, senor." The American laughed and stood tall and said, "Sir, I am a Harvard MBA and can help you. You should spend more time fishing, and with the proceeds, buy a bigger boat. In no time, you'd have a whole fleet of fishing boats. You'd control processing, distribution, manufacturing. You make tons of money, way more than you're doing now. You'd have to leave this village, of course, and move to Mexico City, then LA, and finally New York, where you could grow your expanding enterprise with proper management." The Mexican fisherman looks up and asks, "But then what?" "That's the best part. When the time is right, you'll announce IPO. You'll sell your company and make millions. You will become very rich." "Millions. Then what, senor?" To which the American replied, "Then you can move to a small Mexican coastal fishing village where you could sleep late, fish a little, play with your kids, take a siesta with your wife Julia, and stroll into town each morning where you could sip wine and play guitar with your amigos." At the end of life, are we here to do as much as we can? Or are we here to be as much as we can? It's about asking the questions, not always looking for the answers, right? It's about focusing on the good to remove the graffiti on your wall. It's about integrating the fundamentals to avoid blisters, all while asking, what's it all for? Where is my ladder leaning? There is no answer to what's the meaning of life, but there's a question, how do I create a life full of meaning? Stop worrying, is this the right answer? And start wondering, is that the right question? Seattle, you guys have been awesome. Go Hawks. Sure, yeah. Looks like we have time for some questions. Sorry, James, that I stole your line. Okay. Anyone has questions, I'd be happy to help.
Anyone listen to Paleo Hacks? You should. Okay. All right, we'll take a few minutes for break.
Cool.
And then we start again at 11:30. Oh, we do.
So what's your transformational pushing thing?
Sorry, what's your name? Shan. Thanks for the question, man. Yeah, so I work with men online via Skype all around the world. I've been doing that for 2 or so years, mostly age group between the ages of 30 and 40, and just sitting down and asking them tons of questions, right? And kind of working with them through things, whether it be they want to be successful, more successful than they are, or they want to go places in life that they feel they need accountability for, really, make some solid goals or solid goals and action steps towards them. Coaching's all about taking success and making it bigger, right? And so that's what I like to do. Cool. Thank you. I'll be around.